Okay, on the podcast, Christopher Luxon finally decides to go with a policy that's got some meat to it, and it will make a difference over time. And he's hit employers. Luxon's big, bold and belated move on KiwiSaver, but it screams of a Prime Minister who knows he's in a bit of trouble, so he's scrambling. Big and rushed ideas at us all of a sudden. My panel will discuss it. Plus, I have some breaking news. This government is about to drop a couple of more big policies, and I have them for you too. Stand by. You won't get this in the mainstream media. Let's go.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, proudly sponsored by the Brothers Green. Unlock the innate power of New Zealand botanicals to support your mobility. Try the Brothers Green New Zealand Move Joint Support Tonic and join over 20,000 other Kiwis experiencing easier movement. For as little as $1 a day, you too can experience the power of New Zealand hemp seed oil for your joint health. Head to brothersgreen.co and use code DG20 at the checkout for 20% off your first order. It's a good one. Always read the label. Take as directed. Supplementary, of course, to a balanced diet. The Brothers Green, Christchurch. G'day, good evening. Welcome to Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief. Nice to have you along. I'm Duncan Garner. Nice to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the program. And please subscribe at $7.99 a month. You text my name, Duncan, to 3598, and I'll flick you a link and then you can sign up. Please. It helps us stay here. Team Duncan, you're joining the movement, you know. Don't trust the mainstream. You get it all here. And for $7.99 a month, you'll get extra content. Ask Me Anything sessions, a whole lot comes out on a Friday. So, and my newsletter as well. So, Chris Luxon has finally come up with a big idea. And, okay, so it's more meddling with KiwiSaver. But this time, it's getting some pretty good reviews. This time, he says he wants to match Australian workers who put in 12%. Well, their company puts in 12%. They don't. Except here, he wants workers to contribute 6% and employers 6%. And it's not coming quickly. He'll phase it in super slowly, so the full 12% is not being put into place until about 2032. And there are no moves towards any new government incentives, but this is one way of saying New Zealanders, we're not saving enough, and this is one way of making us richer in retirement. National is still the party, though, that took away the $1,000 kickstart, and they're still the party that halved the $1,000 a year government contribution. This year, they halved it again. It's now just $250. So for people like me, a contractor, it's no longer worth being a KiwiSaver. To be honest, I don't get employer contributions. Government contribution is $250, and I expect that'll be scrapped by National at some point in the future as well. So it's a big, bold expansion of KiwiSaver, except it's still years away and potentially decades away from when you'll see the fruits of, your hard labour. Employers are unlikely to be overjoyed, and it may see more workers moved into contractor roles to avoid the cost. For me, though, it says one thing. Luxon has underplayed his hand in office. He's been underwhelming. He's not been or seen to be hungry over policy. And in many ways, the government's been far too quiet when it comes to new ideas and big, bold thinking, big picture thinking. Now Luxon's realised the polls are writing him off, so he's waking up from his slumber and bringing in big policies. It's odd, it's concerning that it's been so quiet, but at least he's going for it now, try and fight this thing, right? Why this plan wasn't in the budget 2 years ago, who knows, but that's where it should have been. It's all ass about face, really, this government. Little policy, little energy, then when it looks desperate, it wants us to believe that this is because they believe in KiwiSaver, rather than it being an act of desperation. Let's be honest, at least they're doing something. They have never been that keen on KiwiSaver, but now it's the thing they're clinging on to. Also, I can tonight reveal a rates cap is about to be introduced, and regional councils are getting the axe. Exclusive details shortly, but let's go.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Okay, let's be brutally honest here. Christopher Luxon has finally woken up to something the rest of the country worked out months ago, that his policies so far have been totally underwhelming, beige, forgettable, the political equivalent of dry toast. But this KiwiSaver extension, this is the first sign that he's finally decided to grow a spine and swing for something big. He wants to get in the game. There was no big fanfare, no big push. He just dropped it over the weekend, fresh from being criticised as the party that's no longer knows what it's doing on the economy. So he would have taken that to heart, I suppose, the Nats. And now he's doing something in the economy, and he comes out with this. Lifting contributions slowly but surely until we hit a full Australian-style 12% combined. That's what he's doing. It was National leader Rob Muldoon that scrapped the compulsory big super scheme in the 70s. If it was kept, we would be sitting on trillions of dollars and investing in everything. Infrastructure would be amazing. But that's not to be. The Nats scrapped it then, and the Nats have been a bit untrustworthy on national savings since. So can we trust National with a national savings scheme like KiwiSaver? I'm quite question whether they can be trusted on this. Anyway, they're going to make it big. They're going to triple the size of it. Currently, you can put in, 3-4%. Now it's going to go to 12%. Too much cutting, too much meddling from National over the time. They've taken away all the incentives. Is this a genuine change that will happen, or is it just a cynical move that won't mean anything unless they're re-elected? It won't cost them a cent to promise it, really. I mean, yes, the government's an employer, I suppose, so it'll cost them $90-odd million in increased KiwiSaver contributions, but there's no big incentives that the government's putting on here. Just basically you have to save more of your money, so you'll take home less of your money, and your employer is going to be forced to put in more as well, which has interested me that National's forced that. And of course it's been done due to the hefty criticism about them doing nothing for 2 years. It's a largely fair argument to make as well. Name the last big thing Luxon did. But 12% contribution, it's currently 6%. That's not tinkering. That's not tidying sort of the edges. That's Luxon realising he's been playing small, getting called out for it, and suddenly he's decided, well, he's had enough of the meh zone, so he's going big. Honestly, good on him. But because let's not pretend the status quo is working. You can't retire on a hope and a lotto ticket. That's what we've been doing. I mean, Kiwis are well behind the Aussies when it comes to retirement saving. We've been there saving pennies while Australia builds actual retirement nests. For decades, we've joked about crossing the Tasman for better weather. Turns out the real sun shines in their superannuation balances. These guys are loaded and they retire at 59-60. So yes, I respect the ambition from Luxon. It's finally producing something that resembles vision, something that says we're not mucking around anymore. It's bold, it's overdue, it's him finally trying to show the country that he's capable of more than sort of managing things. But here's the flip side. He can't kid himself that one big policy wipes away the last year of underwhelming, unfocused messaging. Kiwis might like this idea, but they're still staring down these massive power bills, rent hikes, grocery shocks, and wondering if Luxon has any idea what the weekly squeeze feels like. This saving stuff's all very well. It's a vision, I suppose, but what about now? A retirement plan is great if you can afford to retire from the constant stress of today. That's the real challenge for Luxon, you see. He can unveil all the long-term economic architecture he wants. At least he's doing something in this space. God, what else has he been doing? But unless he shows he understands the pain people are in right now, he risks looking like a Prime Minister talking about 2050 while people are worried about Wednesday or Thursday this week. And that's exactly why this KiwiSaver move is so important. It's Luxon trying to break that pattern, trying to prove that he can think bigger than spreadsheets and the PR lines, because until now, that's all he's really been capable of. Trying to show he's capable of a prime ministerial moment or two is actually new. Yes, he's realised his policies have been underwhelming. Yes, he knows the country hasn't been that wowed by him. And yes, this is a clear attempt to correct the course. And that's fine. There's no shame in that trying late at all. The shame is not trying at all. So at least he's doing something. So credit where it's due. Luxon's finally stepped out of the safe zone and put something meaningful on the table. If he follows this up with action that helps people today, not just in 30 years, he might drag himself up the polls and out of the political doldrums. Because big policies don't automatically win hearts and minds, but they're a hell of a lot better than underwhelming ones, which underwhelm all of us. And for the first time in a long time, Luxon looks like he knows it, to be honest. So don't stop here, Mr. Luxon. Keep trying. One big policy doesn't save you, but many more policies that are fresh and creative and help the economy might just put you in the fight. For me, I feel like he's done the bare minimum until now. He's relied on the Reserve Bank to do the heavy lifting in this economy. They're still spending like drunken sailors, this government, and it's largely unfocused spending. He's done little on welfare. If his tax cut worked, then no one noticed. He's done bugger all to address the high power prices and was totally underwhelming when that energy policy came out. In fact, it was woefully short of any ambition to lower prices, to be honest. It was almost like it was written by the shareholding minister, what it was, wasn't it, of the companies. And he needs to cap how much local body rates can go as well. He needs to cap the local government rates. So you heard it here first. I can announce it now. That policy is coming before Christmas. The government's going to cap rates at level of inflation. The editor-in-chief's got good sources, you see. Rates are to be capped to inflation. And regional councils will soon be scrapped. The axe is coming down on those even before Christmas. Again, you heard it here first.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Right, let's discuss it now. Ashley Church and Rawdon Christie are with us. Guys, g'day.
Nice to see you too. I'm not quite sure what Rawdon said then.
No, sort of.
Hello.
Is there something there brought to you by some internet?
So I've got these. I don't want any technical issues this week. I've got these new AirPods, and so I don't know how they work. I can hear you. If they these are translating. Apparently, you can translate with these. So what I'm saying may be in Cantonese to you right now. Yeah. I don't know, but
Hear me all right? Yeah. Anyway, just keep your fingers out of your ears and you should be able to hear. Ashley, KiwiSaver and Christopher Luxon, he's gone big. It sort of came from nowhere, really, but he's trying to match the Aussies, which is it's ambitious and good on him, but there's a few fishhooks.
Background to this. So yeah, he is. He's proposing to raise the default setting, which is the setting that you're automatically put on before you make a manual decision as to where you want to be, from 3% to 4%. That whatever position or whatever level the KiwiSaver decides, the employer will be required to match it. But it's really interesting looking at this, because if you go back, bit of history that you guys probably won't be familiar with because you're too young, and Rawdon wasn't here at the time. Back in the 70s, I remember pension was a really, really big issue for New Zealand, and it was projected, because of the baby boom that happened after the war, it was projected to be a huge cost on the New Zealand economy going into the late 90s and early 2000s. And as it turns out, it actually wasn't. It's not insignificant, but in 2006, the cost of pension, or superannuation as we call it now, was 3.9% of GDP on an annual basis. It's sitting currently at about 5.1% of GDP, and there's various projections around what's going to happen to it over the next 40 or 50 years leading into 2060, 2070, but they sit somewhere between 6.5 to 7.7% of GDP, which sounds high, and it is high, but there are countries in Europe spending more than that now. So it's an issue, it's a problem, it's a crisis, but it's not an impending one. And that explains why governments haven't taken much more serious positions or quicker positions on it over the last few years, and why we're getting this piecemeal stuff. But in fairness to Luxon, firstly, the move that they made during the budget, and now what they're proposing to do, which is setting this at a high level, I think is probably a good thing. It does kind of avoid some of the bigger decisions, which I'll talk about in a little while, that they need to make, and puts it on to the saver themselves. But it's certainly a step in the right direction.
Rawdon, desperate Prime Minister looking for some big policy to hang his hat on.
I actually think it's I think it's clever policy. I think the timing of it is clever. Apart from the fact this gives people something to chew over on their way into the summer break. But I think the timing of it's clever, because there's no doubt that we've been living through this we've been trying to sort of endure this cost of living crisis. And when I'm talking to the younger generations, who for the first time have seen maybe mum and dad not being able to afford the meals out the whole time, or the new car every 7 years, or whatever it is, and mums and dads, and this is happening in our house, we're having conversations with the young adults who live with us, saying, guys, you've actually got to pick up the mantle here. Their mum is beginning to send them links to say $60 a week gives you $1 million when you retire, but you've got to do it now. These are conversations I never ever had as a youngster. So I think we've got a real fiscal and economic intelligence amongst our young people. Now, what are they going to do when they see a policy like this put in front of them, as they're also of that voting age for the first, maybe second time?
Yeah.
They're going to be saying, then they're all new to the workforce, and they're going to be saying, hey, this is a leader who actually wants to start safeguarding and future-proofing our later years, because right now mum and dad are beginning to struggle a wee bit through this last 2 or 3 years. I think the timing is excellent, and I think the ambition is excellent. How they can do it, that's probably the hard.
Well, it doesn't cost them much at all, because you're asking the person, the take-home pay will reduce because they have to give more, and the employer has to give more. So it costs the government a bit because they're an employer as well. But that's it, Ashley. I mean,
But you have to. Sorry, I was going to say you have to legislate straight away to get rid of total remuneration. That's the big hurdle everyone's picked up on for this. That does actually involve quite a process. Sorry, Ashley, you take over. I'll shut up.
I was just going to say, so if you look at, I mean, there is an aspect to this which both governments, both Labour and National, have been gutless for some period of time on this. I think it was Bulger's government that increased the age from 60 to 65, which was the last politically difficult and fraught move that a government's taken. There's basically three things that can happen in order to make pension affordable going forward, depending on your definition of affordable. One of them is you means test it. Not going to happen in New Zealand. It's just too politically fraught. The second one is that you can change it from the percentage of the average wage, which is how it's currently measured, from percentage of CPI inflation. That actually brings the cost down and makes it sustainable. Yep. And the third one is you can raise the age further up to, say, 72, and at 72 apparently it becomes sustainable. Or the other thing you can do is you can get the saver to pay to increase their contributions and actually save more, so that the government's contribution is actually less important as a percentage of that. This is dealing with that. The problem they've got, and the thing that they didn't anticipate back when I was looking at this in the 70s as a kid, was that when they were doing all those projections back in the 70s and early 80s, they were basing it on an assumption that people were going to live for a shorter period of time. So now they're living, average male 83, average woman 85. So this idea that the baby boom would pass through and it would start to come down as a cost is not happening. In fact, all of the sustainable figures at the moment look like it's.
Well, I just spoke to our bosses. And said, well, another 3%, eh? Because if you're a smart worker, you'll go 6%, right? Because this is the one chance you have to put a gun to your employer's head and get 6% off them, right? So you go 6%. And how are they going to afford that, Ashley? How do companies afford that?
Well, it's funny you should ask that question, because I understand, and I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, but I understand the figure's much higher in Australia, and has been for some period of time.
Company.
And the result of that... Yeah, 12%. And the effect of that 20 or 30 years on is that the Australian super schemes are massive and are moving around the world. Yeah, looking at ways that they can spend that money, basically, to increase the value of that investment. So maybe we should have taken the hard call earlier. Back when KiwiSaver was introduced, maybe we should have been braver and gutsier than
we should have been, yep.
And I think there's no doubt, though, and you're right, it is a huge responsibility for the employers, which is why they're looking at these ideas of total remuneration to sort of try and step through the side door by offering the idea there is that you can offer your employee either to join the scheme, or maybe you can have the cash up front instead. You can make the choice. Well, guess what's going to happen? 90% are going to take the cash up front. This idea of matching those key, I think. I mean, certainly my experience is that the only time I've had this, offered to me, it was a case of that. You can contribute up to 3%, and we have to match it. Now, why didn't I start contributing 5%? Because actually I felt that there was no real incentive for me to do so, because I didn't think far enough down the line. As long as the employer was matching it, I was comfortable with it. It's a very simple philosophy, isn't it? If you give people something for free, we're going to do what we can in order to get it. So I actually think, I know it's going to be tough for employers, but that's something they've just got to work through. I think this is absolutely key. What happens if we don't do this?
Well, you're poor. You're going to be poor. As simple as that.
If we don't do this... Well, the country's going to be poor. The country will be pouring every cent of tax intake into aged care and health. That's it. There'll be nothing for police. There'll be nothing for your striking nurses. Or actually, health they might be able to, but your striking teachers. That's it. So we have to do something, and I think it's a very well-timed policy.
Do you think this will replace national super in time, Ashley? Because in Australia, if you've got over $1 million asset, whatever, you rely on that your 12% contribution. So you get your super comes by the way of the private sector. Basically, not everyone picks up the national pension in Australia.
What you're asking under another title is, will means testing be introduced? Because that's effectively what that is.
Right.
It's basically saying you get to a certain point. It really comes down to, firstly, the political acceptability of changes over the next couple of generations, because this is not an immediate issue, and secondly, what that cost continues to do over time. And if the country gets wealthier and it doesn't get beyond 6 or 7%, which is what they're currently projecting, probably not. I think it'll carry on. But the interesting question, and I think you kind of implied it right at the beginning of, is this going to be politically advantageous to National going into the next election? And I think the short answer to that is, on its own, no. But as a suite of policies around super, and they've already made that previous change, and a couple of other things that they might announce between now and the election, possibly yes. If you think about who their voters are, so the Greens wouldn't do this, for example, because their voters aren't old. So it's not an issue for them. If you think about who National's voters are, this is an issue that's prescient for them. And if they see that National is making moves that are going to protect their position, then it's probably going to shore up.
But you said this earlier. This is great for 18-year-olds, for 20-year-olds, for 30-year-olds. This is why it's a smart policy, because everyone knows it makes sense to save. Everyone knows it's the right thing to do. And this crucially puts a gun to the head of your employer at 6%. You won't get that otherwise. So I think it's really smart. It's the first time I've seen Luxon look bold, to be honest. Rawdon.
And I do think, and I know it's a long-term policy platform, no doubt, but the reality is that, and you're right, Ashley, in the fact that it's not about one particular policy. It's about, who am I going to be as the leader of this country going forward for another 3.5 years plus. What he's simply saying is, this is what we care about right now. This is what we have to crucially deal with right now. And this would this would not really sit if we all were feeling flush and we were all, but right now we're in a world of pain. We want to hear from somebody who's saying, look, it may not happen right now, but I've got your back, and I'm thinking about what's going to happen.
Yeah, but it doesn't give you more money. It doesn't give you more money immediately. I mean, the real crisis is tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday, Ashley, and this takes money away from you and makes your employer look down the nose at you as well a bit.
Yeah, but to come back to the comment that Rawdon made right at the beginning, it's actually quite clever politics, because what it does is it says this is coming down the track, and it's not going to cost me anything and my government anything right now, but in the future this is going to benefit you. So in that respect, it's actually quite smart. Let's see how it plays out with the electorate. Let's see if there's a spike in their support. As I say, I don't think this policy on its own is going to do it, but I do think as a combination of a few other things, it may well.
I can't believe we haven't gone here before. I honestly, Rawdon, I can't believe that this. To me, this is low hanging fruit, And we they showed their hand a little bit in the budget this year, didn't they? They're moving those thresholds. This to me looks unplanned and unthought through. What they've done is they've got shit. We're in trouble. The polls are against us. That ISPOS poll has really affected them, and so they said, shit. What are we going to do? We better do something this weekend on the economy. And this is the cynic in me. And they've rushed out and said, right, forget what Nicola Willis did in the budget. We're going to go bigger. Yeah, I'm a cynical bastard, but that's what I reckon. They're desperate. They're so desperate.
They're fighting.
When it comes to policy on
with fire, aren't they?
Yeah. I think when it comes to announcing policy on the fly without detail, I think you're thinking of the other crowd.
That's what I was. That's exactly what I was thinking. The difference is they actually got to announce the policy for themselves.
Yeah. It wasn't leaked on them. This doesn't have the appearance of a policy that's been produced over the weekend on the back of an envelope. It does look like something they've worked through over some period of time. I think National's problem is not the way that they produce policy; it's the fact that they don't understand the optics around how to do it. And so it's sort of released as if it's a Monday morning announcement as opposed to
big set piece.
Something with a bit of pizzazz and a bit of drama.
Take to your conference.
Exactly.
I saw Clark and Key do this for years, and I was front and centre of this shit for a long time. And they would package it up. They'd release a little bit of information on the Friday, so off you go and you preview it. And then your Sunday, you got your live crosses down the barrel of Parliament, and your Monday started on the Sunday. And big packages, and that's how they did it. These guys, and I'll go back to Luxon's office, these guys don't know what they're doing.
And that's why I think you're spot on, Duncan, in saying this is reactionary. You're right, I think, actually, as well. This has probably been sitting there in the pile, and they probably had one of their senior advisors sort of trying to nudge it across the table, but it's sort of been pushed to the side. And now somebody's walked in there after that last set of polls, after the CGT sort of misannouncement, and gone, shit, what the hell are we going to do? And somebody said, well, you know that one? Right. Give it here. Let's get it out there. So I think that's exactly what's happened. They're feeling the pressure. And so maybe they've rushed the announcement. Is it, however, and this is what really matters, is it, however, going to have the desired effect for them? And that, well, as you say, we're sit on the fence on that at the moment. The feeling at this stage is that I can't see it doing them any harm.
The same. By the way, we've gone from one extreme to the other. We've gone from the 2017 to 2022 from somebody who made an art form out of making an announcement out of an announcement out of an announcement, and the media would turn up for it, to some people who've actually got something credible and concrete to say and just don't know how to get that message out in a way that's actually the public's going to understand and get excited about.
And Luxon won't be around in 2032 when it all kicks in, probably. I mean, let's be honest, it's 7 years away.
To be fair, that's true of any Prime Minister who makes any policy about super, though, so you can't really hold that against him.
I also understand that a couple of things. The rates cap, there will be a rates cap announced before Christmas, is my understanding. Again, it looks like Luxon may have a new organiser in his office or something, but it looks like they're getting ducks in a row, because it shows how slack they've been in terms of big policy announcements throughout this winter, because we've had the electricity stuff, that was lame. This stuff is starting to stand out now, Ashley, isn't it? It's starting to stand out a bit, like they're actually trying to get back in the fight. So good on them for that. It's ambitious.
So let's just have a look at the optics around this one. So firstly, let's good on them, because this is something that people have been screaming for ages. There's been polls done by organisations basically indicating that the vast majority of the public want a rate cap, and the reason for that is because they've been hammered by some councils around the country over the last few years and want it to stop. Here's the problem with this, though, unfortunately, is that there are two suggestions, and I hope I'm wrong on this. There's a suggestion that it will be a straight rates cap on all spending, and if that's the case, that's fantastic. And that's exactly what the public have called for. But there is a suggestion that it will be a two-form rates cap that will basically say that a core spending, what's called core spending, and essential spending will be exempt from it, and it will only apply to discretionary projects. Now, the problem you've got with that is you then get into a whole debate around what's a core project. Is a library a core project? Is spending money on climate change a core project? Is the sorts of things that councils are doing on a discretionary basis. So unless they nail that, or unless they very, very clearly define what core spending is, they run the risk of this thing turning into a media smorgasbord of
it's got to be simple.
So and the other problem you've got with it too, of course, and this I actually don't think this is a real concern, but it's the thing that it will get hammered with, is people will say, oh, well, you're putting a rates cap on, so basically councils are going to defer maintenance that they otherwise would have done. No, I don't accept that. A council that's being run properly can do maintenance within budget regardless of what the constraints on it are. It just makes sure that it works with what it's got. But that will be a criticism that's nailed at them by the media.
Rawdon?
Yes, please. Set my rates and then start bringing them back down. It's really very simple in my world. I wonder whether they've seen the traction which Wayne Brown got in Auckland, where trying to at least keep a cap on rates to a point actually was fundamentally, to me, the backbone of his re-election. And is pretty popular.
You look at the mayors that got elected. The Whanganui mayor, all the mayors that got elected went in on low rates increases, and they promised them.
Yep. So they've seen that. They've learned from that, and I think it will be a popular policy. That there is going to be so much devil in the detail here, as you just alluded to, Ashley. I mean, we've got what is it? There's been a massive. So interesting enough, Rotorua's council, Tanya Tapsell, got re-elected on a almost on a landslide. But then when you look at the number of people who actually voted, it is so pitifully low, you can't really celebrate it. One of the biggest issues they've had down there has been this thing called the Tarawera sewerage project, where they're making ratepayers around certain lakes pay not a few thousand, but tens of thousands of dollars, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 per household, to sign up to get rid of the septic tanks and to tap into this council sewage. Now, that's the classic example of where we're going to cap rates. They're never going to go up. But I'll tell you what, you're probably going to end up with 15K's worth of levies on top of your rates each year in order to pay for, as you just said, special projects like the library getting repainted. So the devil in the detail is what's going to really hurt this. In principle, it's a bold and will be a very popular policy announcement if it happens.
Yeah, if it happens. And my understanding as well, and they'll end strongly for the year. But what about regional councils? Shane Jones has talked about this, Ashley, that they've got to go. My understanding is there's some work being done on this at the moment. Is it easy to get rid of regional councils?
The short answer is yes, but remember where regional councils came from. So 1989, the government did a massive reorganisation of local government. It reduced the number of local governments in New Zealand, or councils in New Zealand, from I think about 700 down to about 86, a huge reduction. And in the process of doing that, there was some tasks that couldn't be done by local councils, and so they introduced these regional councils, things like pest destruction, and so they introduced, I think there was 15 or 20 of them around the country. And it's interesting because in that first few years, there was some question over whether or not the regional councils were superior to the district and city councils, or whether they were at the same level. And so for a while, they were treated as if they were a higher tier or a higher form of government. I think National Bulger's government later in its term basically clarified that and said, no, they're all the same thing. They just do different things. Look, I don't think they serve a particularly useful purpose. I think that they could... The issue that you will have, and Auckland had this issue before the creation of the super city, was on stuff that requires regional cooperation: tourism, transport, some infrastructural stuff where you actually have to have councils cooperating with each other. But look, councils can do that.
Sort
in good
that out.
faith.
Yeah, of course they can.
Yeah. So I think these things can go. My understanding is that there's no specific announcement been made yet around this. I think you've got a view that there is going to be, there's a pending one. My understanding is that Shane Jones has basically indicated that nothing will happen until the new RMA is in place and that legislation is passed through. But let's see. Either way, if there's an announcement before Christmas that it's going to happen next year, I certainly wouldn't be shedding a tear over it.
I wonder what they do. I remember paying those rates, the regional council rates, and thinking, what the hell am I paying these for?
Yeah, and the only reason why you pay them is because they're so relatively smaller than the other rates you pay. So, it's not much. I'm sure they're doing me some good somewhere, so I may as well pay them, because, my God, I've got this headache over here to deal with, which is my main rates bill. I don't really. I mean, I'm a fan of anything which may lower the cost of bureaucratic clumsiness.
Yeah.
And I do see regional councils as being clumsy bureaucratically and expensive, and I don't really value them for that.
Yeah.
And so, and as you said, Ashley, I think the biggest concern is, what about these sort of cross-council initiatives? I don't know, like waterways or whatever, which run through councils. I mean, we've got to actually credit council with having the ability to be able to talk to each other and get that resolved and actually work together on those sort of issues. So I don't know why you end up creating yet another layer of bureaucracy to do it.
Hey, just I didn't brief you about this, but Winston Peters, we talked about this on Friday, I know, but I actually think that Peters not being Deputy Prime Minister has allowed him to be a bit naughty around this whole Labour thing. I reckon he loved it, actually, in the last 24, 48 hours, that, people are speculating that, he's got the ability to jump both ways. Just a reminder to Luxon, hey, mate, I don't, it's Winston, big swinging dick stuff, isn't it? That's what it is.
Yeah, it is, and I suppose from Winston's perspective, this is where he excels. Yeah. This if Winston could be in campaign mode for the entire time that he's in Parliament and be in the government at the same time, he would be in hog heaven because he loves this stuff. He's the consummate. I mean, he's got 40 years experience on the next closest longevity of any MP. I don't know.
Well, when you think about his compared to Luxon.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you're right. He's loving this. He's back in campaign mode. He's now in the space where it's okay. He's permitted to sort of slag his coalition partners, and boy, is he doing that. And this will just continue to accelerate over the next few months. I've sort of thought a lot about this whole, is he or will he or won't he with Labour? I think at the moment my view is he won't, but by God, will he make us think he might?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's Winston. He can't go with them. He can't.
Well, he said that, hasn't he? I actually also think it was a very clever way of just actually, and well done to David Seymour. Probably responded in the right way. He was the one who really said, if Winston's going to repeal my regulatory standards bill, that shows he's cozying up to Labour. Yeah. So well done to Seymour for actually putting that out there as well. So I think, hello.
There's Winston.
Every dog has his day.
I'll tell you what, as big and scary as Winston might be, hey, there you go. There's election campaign from Tilly.
It's a big dog.
So I've loved the drama. Yeah, she is. Yeah. Tell me about it. Yeah. I've loved the drama of this last week, and you're right. Are we starting the campaign now?
Oh no, we are. And Peters, we are. And Peters not being the deputy prime minister, that's why he wanted the first 18 months. Because the last 18 months he's in campaign mode, as you said, Ashley. You're right. He's a pig in shit, I think is what you're saying, when it comes to the dual roles. And he may well be still part of this coalition, but that guy is campaigning. Make no mistake.
100%.
Yeah, no, we agree.
Yeah,
we agree.
yeah.
No argument from either of us.
Now, before we go, did you want to say something about Trump?
Just very briefly, this thing about this deal he's negotiated without Zelensky. With Putin over Ukraine. And just real quick, so I don't know how many of your listeners know the background, but in 1938, when Chamberlain was Prime Minister of the UK, he signed this thing called the Munich Agreement with Hitler. And that had been preceded by Austria being invaded in March 1938 by Hitler, and then I think slightly earlier that year, an area called the Sudetenland, which was part of Czechoslovakia, he'd invaded that. So there was panic in Europe that he was going to take over the whole of Europe. So Chamberlain flies over, signs the Munich Agreement, which basically said he wasn't going to invade anybody else. 6 months later, he ignored the whole thing and invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia. And then the following year, he took over Poland, and that was the end of that. And the war started. And so this policy was this thing called appeasement. And so appeasement has been thoroughly castigated over the last sort of 80 years by anybody who's got any understanding of how not to do a military agreement. Well, what Trump's just done with Putin makes that look like a strongman approach, frankly. So let me give you a real quick idea, and I know we don't normally talk about this stuff, but this is actually quite a big deal. So firstly, just remember what happened, and I'm not necessarily a fan of Trump. I'm not necessarily a big critic either. I'm somewhere in the middle. But that meeting he had with Zelensky in the White House a few months ago, where they basically castigated him and told him he had to thank them for what they've done, was kind of the start of a series of what are in my view, not only silly moves, but moves that are actually dangerous to the world. So here's what he's basically said to Zelensky, that Ukraine's got to surrender the Donetsk and potentially other occupied territories. Russia's to be readmitted to the G8. That's not for Zelensky, but that's what Trump's offering him. Ukraine's slashing its armed forces from roughly 4.9 million to 600,000. NATO permanently blocking future members so that the Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, Armenia, or anybody else who wants to come can't join it. and basically it's a treaty written in the Kremlin with Trump.
It's impossible.
So, it's just crazy. And so basically what he's doing by dint of this, I know what he wants to do. He's cozying up to his mate Putin and wants to be seen as, having made a decisive decision and solved so-called another crisis. But he's doing it at the expense of the Ukrainian people. This won't happen because Zelensky won't wear it. But this is for me, this is probably the scariest thing he's done when it comes to international diplomacy.
when they're on the border of the Russian border, why would they ever drop their army from 5 million to 600,000? It does not make sense. They'll never do it. It's impossible. No, it's basically saying, fall to your knees, you're about to be overtaken, Come on.
Yep.
Okay, time for some feedback. Hi, Duncan. I agree that this term has been a bit of a challenge. Luxon's not up to it, and frankly never was. I'm not a national voter. Remember that the coalition walked into a total disaster. People's memories are short, Luckily, Winnie and Seymour are there. The Minister of Regulation, Seymour's preoccupation with charter schools, lunches and the media has been too much of a distraction, Duncan. The regulatory review, if there really was one outside the RMA, has totally failed the consumer finance sector and by default everyday New Zealanders wanting to buy a home. They should have repealed Labour's poorly drafted CCCFA legislation and remove its unintended overreach. This is the legislation that means the banks can find out how many coffees you're having. Luxon campaigned on this. I referred to the AM show 2 years preceding the last election, and is quoted as saying the CCCFA has no place in our banking sector. The CCCFA was intended to protect vulnerable borrowers from the likes of payday loan sharks. It weaseled its way into the banking sector, which is already heavily regulated by both the RBNZ and APRA. The banking sector are running scared of the FMA. Don't even get me started on the Reserve Bank lending the banks billions of dollars at 0.25 for them to then wage war on each other with that money to gain business off each other and at 600% margins. This was evident in their profit increases at the time. The alternative. Imagine, however, if the class clowns won the next election. What a disaster that would be for the New Zealand economy. Wrecked. New Zealand can't sustain another financial shock with overtaxation, already way too high, and ridiculous overspending policies via the Party Māori and the Greens, who will hold Labour to ransom. Note, New Zealand is the only OECD country in a recession, and we have been in one for the last 3 years, created on purpose by the RBNZ. We're just starting to turn the corner now. I hope the coalition stays put, but with National as a much less powerful component, only time will tell. That's my rant. LOL. You're doing a great job, mate. Keep it up. Jared Beckett, NBA Director. Thank you, mate. Appreciate the feedback. Smart feedback. Very smart feedback. Thank you. That's us, folks. You can always get hold of me, Duncan@rover.nz. You can also subscribe. You text my name, Duncan, to 3598. And we have got hundreds and hundreds of subscribers now coming in. So we really appreciate it if you can join up. It helps keep us around, helps keep us afloat, helps us stay here. So text my name, Duncan, to 3598, and I'll flick you a link. And then for $7.99, we'll get you all that extra content. And it comes out on a Friday as well. $7.99. Your gym membership's more. I mean, you go and get a half beer, it's more. So we do appreciate you getting in behind us. Thank you so much. To my team, Lockie, Brody, thank you, boys. The hardest working men and podcasts in New Zealand, those two. And we'll do it all again tomorrow. Remember, life's a dress rehearsal. There's no curtain raiser. This is it. I live one of the best places on earth. So get out and enjoy it and have some fun. And thank you, of course, to the Brothers Green Christchurch who make all this possible as well. Thank you for being in partnership with us and thank you for your support. Cheers, ears.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, sponsored by the Brothers Green. Feed your gut what it needs. Digest Gut Health Protein Powder. I use it myself. It supports natural digestion and gut health. Made with premium Canterbury-grown hemp powder and a unique blend of active kiwifruit enzyme powder and kiwifruit skin extract, offering natural prebiotics and a nutrient-rich profile to complement a balanced lifestyle. Always read the label. Take as directed. Supplementary, of course, to a balanced diet. The Brothers Green, Christchurch.